It's what I saw in that moment. It's what I didn't miss. Someday, but not today. It's 5:15 on the button as I step through my front door, anticipating the everyday chaos that dominates any household where adolescents and animals outnumber the adults 6-2. Instead, it is quiet, calm, and nearly empty. Keely, our 14-year-old black-haired sheepdog, blocks my way, slowly stretching and rising to greet me. She'd been an infuriatingly eager to chew anything one-year-old mutt when we got her a month after our wedding, but today she's half deaf, half blind, and her ceremonial greeting is about as lively as she gets. I deposit my laptop bag into the corner, then lean over and pat the old dog with the casually wagging tail. "Hey puppy, how you doing?" I've been calling her that since the day I'd found her at a local animal shelter, and it still amazes me that my puppy has somehow turned into an old dog right in front of my eyes. Where have her years gone, and how has she grown old without me? I straighten up and head toward the kitchen, knowing from the quiet that it too has been abandoned for the moment. I glance at the baby gate, the leash hooked to the island in the middle of the kitchen, and the dog food and water scattered and spilled on a pair of small bowls. Through the open window over the sink, I hear the shrieks and laughter of my children, the barking of our new puppy. The chaos is still here, I realize. It's just moved into the backyard. With a four-legged fur ball out of the kitchen, I yank up the baby gate and pull it out of the doorway towards me. It's not easy going back to gated rooms after your children have outgrown infanthood, and I see no reason to step through an obstacle course while the puppy plays freely outside with my screaming children. At the end of a long day at work, I'm not really in the mood for this, but it's time to put the gate in the corner, get out the broom, and assess today's damage. And then suddenly I feel resistance and the gate being pulled away from me. I pull back a little harder, and the resistance increases as well. I hear a grunt, or was that a giggle? Clearly, someone is playing with me, although it's too quiet for the young puppy and too playful for the old mutt. I glance to the left and then down to locate my adversary. Sure enough, it's Noah, my 11-year-old, with two sets of white knuckles framed around the other side of the gate, one leg braced up against a door jamb for leverage, the other planted behind him for balance. "Hey, Dad," he greets me, a toothy grin pasted on his face. I grin back in turn. "Hey, Noah." I slowly increase my pressure to match his, and there I am, standing in the living room playing tug-of-war over Babygate with my 11-year-old. It's not really a fair match. I'm a full-grown man, 20 pounds over my high school athletic weight, while Noah, as an 11-year-old, is still on the other side of the growth spurt that will eventually even things up a bit. But he's a fighter, my son, and these little impromptu contests are each getting a bit more challenging. We're laughing and pulling at the same time, and I begin to alternate my effort. Pulling hard, slowly relaxing, pulling hard, and then suddenly relaxing again. And now I've got him. Noah is completely off balance, both feet now gripping the floor in front of me, while the rest of him leans backwards at a 45-degree angle over the hard wood floor, while he hangs stubbornly onto the gate. He gives a little squeal as he recognizes his predicament, and he begins to pull even harder, gaining some traction, but leaving himself stretched nearly parallel over the floor. I raise my eyebrows into my best gotcha look and smile. "What happens if I let go?" I ask. "I'd get a headache," he replies, and then flashes a knowing smile back at me. "But I'd win." I begin pulling him slowly upright, and my smile turns to a full-out grin. "Hey, Noah, guess what?" He looks up at me, and his own grin gets bigger as well. "Not today?" he asks. I laugh at the familiar joke and at my son for stealing my line. "Nope, not today, son. Someday, but not today." "But someday," he repeats, with the word trailing off as if he's holding me to a promise. He rises to stand, lets go of the gate to give me a quick hug of greeting, and then bounds down the stairs toward the backyard, where his siblings and the yipping puppy await him. Someday, but not today. It's our inside joke, Noah and me. It started a few years ago when I'm sure I seemed like a giant to my son, big, strong, fast, invincible, since the day is inevitably coming when I'll be thought of as old, fat, slow, and intractable. I haven't really fought this more idealistic impression, but have used it as a motivation for my son, whose place in his class picture has always been in the front row, and whose uniform number on sports teams has always been a very low single digit. "Son, someday you're going to be stronger than me," I'd said back then. "Faster than me, too. You'll challenge me to a game of one-on-one, and you'll beat me. That day is coming. Even at 11, he still has a hard time believing that, but he's determined to see it through. And since part of my job of parent is to put myself out of a job by preparing him well, I've encouraged the competition. Now, don't get me wrong, I've thrown enough races and games over the years to be nominated for the Forrest Gump honorary Oscar for beating the Chinese at table tennis but losing to his own son at ping pong. But there comes a time when a boy knows when you're taking a dive, and he wants to beat you fair and square. And so the competition is on, and frankly, I can't wait to lose. Although I hope the loss will be due more to his precipitous climb and ability than to my own inevitable decline. And sure, 10 seconds after the high-fiving is over, I'll call for the best of 2 out of 3, and the competition will begin anew. That day is coming. But today, I look out the kitchen window at my family the way they are today. In the far backyard, Noah and Benjamin sprint up the slide with their puppy inches from their heels, then collapse in laughter as the dog loses traction at the top and slides helplessly down, backwards on her belly. The dog sits panting at the bottom, waiting expectantly for another shot. This is not a new game, but some things never grow old, especially for puppies and children. Nearer to the house, on the patio, Nadia is roughhousing with 5-year-old Josiah, tickling him while he howls with delight, fighting to get away. But not really. In between them all, I spy 4-year-old Elizabeth riding through on her trike, trying to figure out which family party to crash first. Behind me, I hear the sharp clip of nails on wood as my tired old companion slowly makes her way across the wooden floor to her young rival's water dish. I smile. That 30 seconds of activity must have made the old girl thirsty. In truth, the old dog is simply weary of the chaos all around her, and she saves most of her appearances for the quiet parts of the day, avoiding bath time, for example, but sitting with me in each of the children's rooms as we end our nights with prayers. I look back at the scene outside. Someday, I think to myself, that crazy puppy will be as ancient as the old dog behind me. Amazing. But then there are some days all around me. I'm the youngest of 6 children myself, and my empty nest siblings and friends often remind me of all the things they say I'm missing. Someday, they say, I'll have an evening of free time to look forward to, a quiet night alone with my wife. Sounds nice, and it will happen someday, but not today. Today, I'll enjoy a quick family meal at our noisy, boisterous dining room table, followed by a kids' soccer game, homework, multiple baths, and the inevitable chaos of bedtime. Someday, they say, I'll be able to watch what I want on TV, see first-run movies that are neither G-rated nor animated, and eat at restaurants at tables instead of booths, without kids' menus and crayons dominating the place settings. That's true as well, I say. Though for today, the cartoons and kid-centric movies make me feel younger than my age, and I kind of like having an excuse to play hangman with Crayolas in public. Someday, they say, I'll no longer need to worry about bathroom breaks interrupting movies and mealtimes. That's true as well, I guess, although sometimes the interruptions are more entertaining than the main event. I remember the first movie we brought Noah and Benjamin to, on a camp-out weekend in Wisconsin when we'd abandoned our flooding campsite for a dry theater in a nearby town. Benjamin was so small that the theater chair kept springing back, trapping him in a V, with his knees at his chest and his tiny butt sliding down through the crack towards the floor. We tried to keep one hand holding down the chair, but every time we reached for popcorn, poor Benjamin would fold like an accordion. The movie was a Thomas the Train story, a lame movie that we would never have chosen for their first feature film if we'd planned it for a non-weather emergency. When the antagonist Mean Engine had appeared on the screen with a presence that was far more laughable than scary, it was still too much for a 3-year-old to handle. Noah stood up in great alarm and turned to us with an urgent message that he was sure we'd understand. "Let's get out of here," he'd shouted loudly, at which point Nadia had reached out for him and let go of Benjamin's chair again. Whap. One of the worst movies ever. It was both a commercial and critical bomb, but Nadia and I have rarely laughed so hard in a theater. And who could forget Elizabeth's first meal in a Mexican restaurant? She'd stood at the end of the meal to put on her coat and then upchucked the entire meal in one motion into a perfect, concentric, disgusting mess on the floor. Well, perhaps my empty nest friends have a point on this one. I've never been back to that restaurant. Someday, perhaps, but certainly not today. Scanning the kitchen, I spied 2 halves of a wooden spoon in the corner next to 1,000 pieces of a box that I'd placed in the recycling bin this morning on my way out the door. Sighing loudly for the benefit of my old deaf dog, I turn to get the broom and dustpan, and the somedays keep playing in my mind. Someday I'll be able to arrive late to church and quietly grab a couple of chairs at the back, unlike last week, when I led my public parade of 6 to the very front row, the only spot left with enough seats for all of us. That will be less of a hassle for sure, but on Sunday my family and I crowded around a single hymn book and lifted 6 spirited voices like we do around a campfire with no one around, and when it was time for the prayers of the people, I knew exactly what I was thankful for, front row or not. Someday, I'll be tired of coaching every sport my children play, using up all of my free time teaching other people's kids how to dribble a basketball, kick a soccer ball, catch a baseball. Someday, perhaps, but not today. For now, I'll take a day like last Saturday, as I led Josiah and his teammates in a non-competitive, no-score-kept soccer match against another team of kindergartners. Unfortunately, the other team had a man-child on it, and Josiah and his teammates took turns bawling as the freakishly huge kids scored goal after goal, knocking half of our team to the ground in the process. And then Noah and Benjamin on the sidelines had accidentally let go of Lexi's leash, and our wild golden doodle puppy had streaked onto the field and stopped the next breakaway all by herself, attacking the ball with such enthusiasm and passion that even the opposing team's soon-to-be shaving gigantor had to stop and laugh hysterically. A minute later, with tears now forgotten, the ball ended up in front of Josiah's feet with a clear path to the goal, and he had reared back and booted the ball straight into the net. A definite first for my youngest son. In his excitement, Josiah turned not towards his teammates, but to his 2 older brothers on the sideline, who abandoned any mantle of too cool for this level of soccer attitude and rushed the field, high-fiving their little brother like he'd just won the World Cup. Yeah, I'll take moments like that. Glancing back out the open window, I noticed the grass getting longer again, although I swear I just finished mowing it yesterday. And the some days continue, rapid fire. Someday, I think to myself, I'll be able to mow the whole yard in one shot with no interruptions, and then relax in a lawn chair with a cold drink. Someday I'll ignore the frog that jumps in my path. I'll push it out of the way of my mower, or step past it on the sidewalk, or just look past it in the busyness of my day. Someday I'll be irritated by that snake in the grass and will look for the hole to plug. Someday, but not today. Today I'll shut off the mower and grab that frog. I'll chase that snake through the bushes and dive for it as it heads for a hole. I'll turn and yell the news of my discovery to my nature-loving children, who will come a-running with their buckets and bug catchers to their conquering dad. And the lawn will wait. Turning to the fridge, I examine the collection of drawings and sketches and block letters held behind an assortment of magnets. Someday I'll be satisfied with Father's Day cards that come in the mail, made by Hallmark, with signatures and ink, and my full name on the envelope address. Someday, but not today. Today I'll take the handmade pieces of art to Daddy that don't cost a thing, but that carry a price tag too high for any art collector to afford. I'm heading down to the family room now, and I nearly wipe out on a soccer ball at the bottom of the stairs. I try to stick with the theme. Someday I'll be tired of tripping over toys that aren't put away. Nah, that one's forced. That someday is already here. I tap the ball to the right with my right foot, laces up, over by the coffee table next to the chessboard that I'd bought in China while missing my 3 sons while bringing their sister home. On 3 of my first mornings of daddy-daughter walks, I'd pushed the stroller into the little shop down the street in Guangzhou, over to the handcrafted chess set that kept calling my name, checked the price tag underneath, and then shook my head and turned away, past the aged owner sitting with his look of practiced indifference. On our last morning there, I'd pulled a piece of luggage into the shop instead of the stroller. As I shook my head one final time, the owner had sauntered over with a wide smile beneath serious eyes, ready to play out the game we'd started 3 days prior. I can no longer remember how much we settled on, but one way or another, that pocketful of Chinese yuan was not making the flight home that day. 3 years later, my eyes smile at those same chess pieces now scattered about on the coffee table and board, one king on its side, and this someday isn't forced. Someday, Noah will beat me at chess without the special do-over privileges he enjoys today, and he's getting closer. Last night, after 2 do-overs still left him on the run, I allowed him to resurrect one fallen piece to rejoin the battle, and his reincarnated rook was all he needed to vanquish me in 3 moves. I look forward to that one especially, being able to compete with my children at an even level. I lean the broom into the corner and open the sliding glass door, reaching down to pick up another wayward toy on my way outside. I smile. Someday I'll have the discipline to finish this job before being tempted to join in the random game outside. I know Nadia's looking forward to that someday. But that is not today. Today I step outside, yell, "Frisbee!" and toss it on a high, long arc toward the open area down by the little apple tree we planted this year. A high-maintenance tree today, but one that will someday bear fruit. Noah and Benjamin and the puppy immediately turn and give chase. My boys after the Frisbee, the puppy after my boys. Josiah looks up from the ground where he's still being tortured by his mama and flashes that delighted smile that still welcomes his daddy home each evening. At the end of the patio, Elizabeth turns her three-wheeler on a dime and starts pedaling furiously in my direction. In the end, yes, someday my siblings and friends will be right, and I'll be ready for that empty nest. But for today, there's a little princess who would rather be riding on her daddy's shoulders than on her trike. Today, there's a little boy who needs to be rescued from the tickle monster that is his mother. Today, there are two adolescents who still find it fun to flick frisbees with their father. And today, there is a puppy who has not yet grown old and weary of the chaos all around her. Though she will, I know. And I will too. Someday. But not today.
Going first.
Oh, come on. I was moving my body, not my racket.
Press L5?
Yep. You're going down.